Good day, everybody. My name is Larry Cretion with Green Energy Consumers Alliance, and with me today are colleagues Anna Vanderspeck and Loie Hayes, and we're here to talk to you about the Federal Inflation Reduction Act and its impact on energy, climate, and consumers like yourselves. We will do this all within an hour. We'll do a brief presentation and take some questions. And if you could advance the slides, Anna, that would be great. So I'm curious, we don't have a poll, but I hope many of you are familiar with us, but for those of you who are not, good to see you virtually. We are a nonprofit organization, and we have a mission to harness the power of energy consumers to speed the transition to a zero carbon future. This is our 41st year as an organization, and we serve the states of Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And we do so with a suite of programs that consumers and communities can tap into. And you can go to our website, greenenergyconsumers.org, to learn more about those programs. And we'll touch on those programs a fair amount today. And we also do public policy work. We advocate for better policies in terms of energy and climate at the state level. We spend a lot of time working with state governments, Massachusetts and Rhode Island. So today we have a few things we hope that you'll be able to take away from this. The Federal Inflation Reduction Act is a game changer. That sounds like a cliche sometimes, but it really is true. It's the largest investment in climate action that the world has ever seen. It has provisions in it that can affect every American. But we know from, there have been surveys, a lot of people don't know anything about the Inflation Reduction Act. The word's slowly getting out, and there are things ready to go that you can tap into right now. And so that's why we're doing this. I had heard just a couple months ago that something like 2/3 of Americans didn't know much about the Inflation Reduction Act. And then I saw something that said that at least 40% did not know about the tax credit for electric vehicles. And I am actually pleasantly surprised that 40% do. And Anna will talk about that later, but it's kind of mind-boggling how big of an impact the Inflation Reduction Act can be. What's important to note is that you can combine the Inflation Reduction Act incentives with state incentives. And I assume that most of you on this call today are from Massachusetts and Rhode Island. If you're from another state, we welcome you too. Your state probably has state incentives that we don't know as much about. But when you combine the federal incentives and the state incentives, you can significantly bring down the cost of clean energy technologies. And the third one, the incentives are available for 10 years, which means you can plan out how to get to net zero for your home. And this is critical. For up until the Inflation Reduction Act passed a little over a year ago, most of the tax credits for solar energy, for example, were limited to 2 or 3 years. And then at the last year, there would be a hustle to try to extend them in Congress. And it was not really conducive to growing the solar industry or for consumers who are trying to figure out, maybe they don't need the solar tax credit today, but maybe they will in the future. But what the Inflation Reduction Act did was it put them in place until 2032 and actually up to 2034 in some cases. As Anna will explain on the electric vehicle side, it used before the Inflation Reduction Act, the tax credit for electric vehicles was tied to how many units a car maker sold in terms of EVs. And if they sold over 200,000, then that company their products became ineligible for the tax credit. So that's been wiped away as well. So now we're saying you don't need to go out today immediately and do everything that the Inflation Reduction Act can support, but we encourage you to look at it and make a plan for yourself. And within 10 years, you can get to net zero, hopefully. And we talk a lot about what it means for consumers, but it also has great opportunities for people in their community. And our experience is that people like you who are on this call tend to be somewhat connected to your community. And it's important that cities and towns look around, do some planning in city and town halls, identify sites, identify potential partners, and maybe even contractors. A lot of the federal Inflation Reduction Act comes at you fairly easily, but a lot of the money you have to apply for, and it can be competitive and it requires some planning. It's not like the federal government's dropping money from a helicopter down to your city or town hall. So you got to go after it. You got to be proactive. And we are encouraging communities to staff up and get it done. Hire consultants if they need to, but usually there should be the capacity within the government. Obviously, any community with a city manager or a city or mayor with staff should be able to do this. And there's also support you can get from maybe the state government to help your city or town do things. So those are the takeaways. Is there a fifth? I'm not sure. Next slide. Okay. So this slide, just to show you when the bill passed in the summer of 2022, the Congressional Budget Office estimated that this is what the Inflation Reduction Act would cause in terms of investments. And they came to a total estimated cost of the investments in tax credits of $369 billion. And if you look at the graph, most of that money was going to be in the electricity sector, but also there would be building efficiency, electrification, transportation, and others that are pretty big. What we've found out since then is that it's probably going to cause an investments of much greater than that, maybe 2 or 3 times. And that's because the $369 billion was just an estimate of the Congressional Budget Office was sort of trying to estimate how many of us as consumers were going to participate and how many businesses were going to make investments at their sites or building new factories. And what we've found is early on, just a little bit more than a year, participation has been much stronger than expected. And that's a good thing. That's how we get to our energy and climate goals much faster. So the point being, in the Inflation Reduction Act, there's some money in the form of grants that have been allocated, say, to the U.S. Department of Energy or the Environmental Protection Agency, and the amount of money there is fixed. We know how much has been appropriated, but the tax credits are available for 10 years and maybe 12, and that gives some uncertainty as to what it's going to cost. But what our message is, let's try to make that number as large as we can, because that's how we end up saving the planet and creating jobs and actually reducing cost to energy consumers. Next slide. Here's a source. There's this company E2, and there are others who are doing this. They're already tracking the investments that are caused by the Inflation Reduction Act. And there's a legend there that shows that there's a lot of investment going on in building batteries and storage for cars and for stationary applications, for building factories for clean vehicles, electric cars mainly, upgrading the grid, solar installations, wind installations, and so forth. But what's important, we're talking mostly as an organization about what consumers can tap into. But the manufacturing sector is a huge part of the Inflation Reduction Act. A lot of what we're talking about, the batteries, the cars, the solar panels, the heat pumps, there's incentives for companies to make in America. And so this is what is really surprising a lot of people about what the Inflation Reduction Act has caused. And so if you go to that website, if you're that interested, you can actually zero in on the investments by type. But I've read that the Inflation Reduction Act is causing probably the largest increase in manufacturing investment that we've seen for many decades. A big part that we want to highlight that is not about tax credits, but there's an item called the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. It's $27 billion. and it's actually going to be implemented by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. It establishes a green bank to provide low cost financing for clean energy projects. In anticipation of that it's going to take a while for that to get moving, but Governor Healy in Massachusetts established a community climate bank for affordable housing that will be sort of a place to try to capture the federal dollars. But one thing we're very excited about is that of the $27 billion, $7 billion is specifically earmarked for a Solar for All program that's targeted towards bringing the benefits of solar energy to low income and disadvantaged households. Massachusetts and Rhode Island have applied for that. We have a typo here. It says maximum award of 400 million for Massachusetts. It's actually 250 million. And where it'll probably take months before we hear about Massachusetts or Rhode Island, but I'm optimistic both proposals were very strong, and might take another few months after that before the cash starts hitting the street, as they say. But that's a game changer as well. That will enable both states of Massachusetts and Rhode Island to create better access for solar energy than we've seen so far. And our organization will participate if possible. And if we don't, the good news is that somebody else will, and will bring the benefits of solar energy to low and moderate income people. And then, as you can see, there's other money that will go to communities as well. That we're excited about this provision. It's all about environmental justice and equity. Next slide. So I'll go through some slides about some of the interesting clean energy incentives. Really recommend, this is almost a takeaway by itself. Go to rewiringamerica.org and look for their IRA calculator. You'll put in your zip code, whether you own or rent, what your household income is, whether you file singly or jointly, and what your household size is. And a lot of the tax credits everyone's eligible for as a taxpayer, but there are some rebates that are available that are income means tested. And so basically, if you're at or below a certain income, you could possibly receive rebates on top of the tax credits or in addition to the tax credits. The rebates are going to be administered by the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources and the Rhode Island Office of Energy Resources. Those details are not out yet. So you can go to the calculator and get a sense of what kinds of technologies you might be able to receive rebates for, but that information from the states is not yet available. And to be honest with you, the rebate money isn't a large pot of money, so the states have to figure out how they're going to spend it. But the tax credit money, as I said, is pretty unlimited. Next slide. So in particular, on the clean energy credit, the IRA extend them for 10 years, which is great news, as I said. Next. It applies to several clean energy technologies, solar photovoltaics and solar hot water. Most folks are now doing solar photovoltaics or solar power. You can get a tax credit for home battery storage with or without the solar for the first time. You can get the tax credit for geothermal, which is also called ground source heat pumps. Those things are pretty new. The amount is pretty significant. It's 30% from 2022 to 2032. And then it tails off kind of gradually, but we do get a couple more years of 26% in 2033 and 24% in 2034. So in other words, maybe you're not in a house right now where you can do solar or storage or geothermal, but maybe 5 years from now you will be. And having a solar array at your home or community solar, those are great ways to reduce the operating cost of electric heating in EVs if you're able to put them all together. But you can also do them separately. And there's a website that the IRS has, irs.gov. You can see that. We will email out these slides where you can look for the links later on. But we're not tax advisors, so we recommend that you really look at that page. Next slide. At the state level, there are solar incentives that are pretty significant in both states. And so Both states have what's called net metering as one option, which is if you put solar on your roof or your backyard, the solar that is produced from that will offset the energy use that you have at your home or your business. It kind of makes the meter go backwards. In addition, Massachusetts has another program called SMART, where instead of net metering, you would get paid a fixed amount, an incentive for a long-term contract. So you get to choose whether or not you want to go through SMART or net metering. With net metering, the amount you receive is a little less certain, but there are reasons why you might want to look at both ways to go. In Massachusetts, there's a state income tax credit of 15% of the total cost of the system, up to $1,000. Rhode Island has something very similar in both ways. They have a program for small scale solar out of the Commerce RI, and that link there you'll get when you get the slides. It's an incentive that can be combined with net metering. Next slide, our next item. They also have net metering, but then they also have an REG program, which is as an incentive for 20 years. It cannot be combined with net metering. It's very similar to what Massachusetts has for the SMART program. So both states have been pretty generous. When you add it to the fact that the tax credit from the federal government is now for 10 or 12 more years, it gives us all a chance to plan a little bit better. So for solar shopping, our organization's been working for several years with a company called Energy Sage. I have always said I wish I had the ability to do what they did. They have a website. You can go online, you put in your address, and they will get you competitive pricing from up to 7 quotes from installers that they have pre-screened that have good customer satisfaction numbers. You can indicate whether or not you want local installers or larger installers that might work the entire state or country. It's free registration to do that. They will advise you if you have questions on all the bids that you're going to get. Sometimes the bids are a little bit technical to you, and you might be able to get them to explain the differences. Sometimes you don't want to go with the lowest bidder because maybe the next bidder has better equipment that they're proposing, and the advisors will walk you through that. They won't call you, or the installers won't call you unless you press a button that says you're willing to take their calls or to set up appointments, and you're under no obligation to install anything. Now, in full transparency, we do get a small commission for contracts that are signed, and so we would appreciate it to get to the Energy Sage website. If you go through ours, greenenergyconsumers.org/solar. Energy Sage, we have great customer satisfaction results from them, and they it's been studied by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Mass Clean Energy Center. You can typically get solar installs for about 15% less going through Energy Sage than just grabbing the first installer that you see. And now I'll turn it over to Loie Hayes, who will talk to you about heating and energy efficiency incentives.
Great, thanks for that overview, Larry. So looking at the federal level first for energy efficiency improvements for your home, there is that tax credit. It's 30% of the cost of an energy efficiency project. There up to certain limits. So if you're installing a heat pump or a heat pump water heater, you can claim $2,000 against your tax liability, and then you can add electric panel upgrades, windows, doors, insulation. You can only claim a total of $3,200 per year, and there's no rollover. So you purchase that heat pump, and you can only take a tax credit for the heat pump in the first year that you install it. Next, please. So on the state level, both Mass Save and Rhode Island incentivize all sorts of things, for energy efficiency improvements. In Massachusetts, if you're not in a Mass Save territory, you may be served by a municipal light plant, and then the incentives and rebates are determined by that by that MLP. And in Rhode Island Energy is the utility. They work with a vendor called EnergyWise Rhode Island. A lot of people are familiar with that, or more familiar with that, because they've been working in the state for a long time. And most recently, the Rhode Island Energy Office of Energy Resources has added additional funding for heat pumps. Next slide. Anna, if you could, thank you. So focusing specifically on heat pumps now and Massachusetts. The whole home heat pump rebate from Mass Save is $10,000, and that's for homes where you are completely replacing your fossil fuel system. You don't have to rip the fossil fuel system out, but the heat pump needs to be designed to provide 100% of your heating needs. If you are a moderate income household qualified through the income qualification process, you're between 60 and 80% of state median income. That rebate for the whole home rises to $16,000. And if you're a low income qualified home, then the subsidy rises to 100%. So that could be very advantageous. Now, if you want to retain your fossil fuel system, say part of your home isn't well suited for the heat pump that you're thinking about installing, or say you want the heat pump to provide 100% of your heating needs down to, say, 30 degrees or 25 degrees or 20 degrees, whatever it is, then you have what's called a partial home incentive of $1,250 per ton of heating capacity. A ton of heating capacity you can think of as adequate for, say, 300 to 500 square feet. Now, if your home is suitable for geothermal, that means there's space for the equipment to come onto your property to do the appropriate digging or drilling that's necessary to install the system, and the soil is appropriate for the contractor to manage. There are significant incentives for geothermal as well. In Mass, so the Mass Save incentive is $15,000 plus the 30% tax credit, and in Rhode Island, it's I'm sorry, I don't have that figure in Rhode Island in front of me. I believe I might have it on a later slide. If your home is income qualified, that incentive increases to $30,000. And there are additional incentives for heat pump water heaters. And again, if you live in a municipal power and light community, you want to check with them for the incentives. Next, please. So the Rhode Island Heat Pump Incentive, the program that's just been launched by Office of Energy Resources is called Clean Heat Rhode Island, just launched in September. A wonderful thing about it is that they have the free consultation services, both before you meet with contractors and after, to review the quotes with you and help you decide between the quotes. So that's a really important consumer protection aspect of the Clean Heat Rhode Island program. They're using $25 million in federal funding for this program. The incentive is up to $1,350 per ton. That's when you combine the Clean Heat Rhode Island incentive with the Rhode Island Energy incentive, and it depends on various factors, including which fuel is being displaced, whether it's oil, propane, gas, etc. There is a geothermal incentive, $1,250 per ton, and again, that's plus the federal tax credit of 30%. There is a set aside for electric service upgrade, and if you are a low-income household, the subsidy for heat pump can be 100%. They're not installing these in gas-heated homes for low-income people, because there's a possibility that your energy burden would actually be increased. Next slide. Green Energy Consumers does have a dedicated heat pump program. Our goal is to help energy consumers find the trusted vendors and sound advice. We do have an online portal for finding heat pump installers, particularly in Eastern Massachusetts, Worcester, and East. There's a discount on independent quote comparison reports through our website, and you can also schedule virtual consultations with a heat pump expert for unbiased advice. Both of these cost a small amount, but in comparison to thousands of dollars for a heat pump system, it's well worth it. And you can get more details on our website. And I think that's my last slide. Yep, back to you, Anna.
Thanks, Loie. So I will talk through our final sector here, which is transportation, and then we'll go straight to Q&A. So if you do have a question, feel free to enter it into the Q&A box on the Zoom window, and we'll get to all the questions at the end. But in the transportation sector, the first thing we're going to talk about is the federal tax credit for electric cars, because this is the way most people are interacting with the Inflation Reduction Act in the transportation world. So as Larry already mentioned, the first thing that the IRA did was extend that credit to 2032. So it's going to be in place for 10 years. The amount is up to $7,500. That's based on the vehicle and then your personal tax liability. So if you don't owe $7,500 in federal taxes, at least for the rest of this year, the IRS will not write you a check for the difference. As I mentioned, the Clean Vehicle Credit is now valid through 2032, but there are a couple of new requirements. If you're familiar with the federal tax credit before the IRA, there are lots of new details that you should know. So the first is that the Clean Vehicle Credit is now limited to people who meet these income requirements. So if you file your taxes jointly, your income has to be under $300,000 for you to qualify. For heads of household, that's $225,000, and for individual filers, it's $150,000. So that's the first thing to check is, do I qualify based on my income? If you do, you can then move on to learn all the other details. So the federal tax credit is now available for battery electric vehicles or BEVs, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, and fuel cell electric vehicles. But in each of those categories, there are new vehicle requirements that the particular car that you're considering purchasing has to meet. So what are those requirements? The first is that the final assembly location of the vehicle must be within North America. And there's a tool that you can use to type in the particular vehicle identification number of the car that you're looking at to see where it was assembled. But that is the first and easiest thing to check if you're looking at a particular vehicle. Secondly, the vehicle's MSRP, or manufacturer's suggested retail price, has to come under a cap depending on what type of vehicle it is. So if you're looking at an SUV, a van, or a pickup truck, the MSRP has to be under $80,000. If you're considering a sedan or a hatchback, it has to be under $55,000. A key point here is that the important number is the MSRP, not the final sales price. So if you are looking at a vehicle that's just under that limit, but then the final price that you pay is above, if you're including taxes and title and registration and all that, you still qualify as long as the MSRP is under the limit. And then finally, there are two sets of mineral and battery component requirements that are very complicated that the vehicle has to meet in order to qualify. So if the vehicle has a final assembly location in North America and is under the price cap and meets neither of these battery requirements, then it doesn't qualify for the federal tax credit. If it's assembled in North America, is under the price cap, and meets just one of the two battery requirements, then the amount is $3,750. And if the final assembly location is in North America, it meets the price cap and it meets both battery requirements, then the vehicle qualifies for the full $7,500. The important thing to know here is that those battery requirements change every year. So right now we know which vehicles qualify for what through the end of 2023, but in 2024, the battery requirements ramp up. And so it remains to be seen exactly which vehicles will qualify starting on January 1st. One important thing to know is that the federal tax credit is something that you take advantage of if you purchase, but if you lease, the situation is a little bit different. So the Inflation Reduction Act, in addition to revamping the federal tax credit for individuals, creates a commercial vehicle tax credit. So for commercial entities that want to buy vehicles for their business, they can now apply for this commercial vehicle tax credit. But that commercial tax credit does not have any of the same eligibility requirements as the tax credit for individual vehicle purchases. So the final assembly location, the price cap, and the battery requirements all do not apply to commercial purchases. So what lots of automakers are doing is basically, if you're leasing the vehicle, the leasing agent, basically the dealer's bank or the dealership, they apply for the commercial vehicle tax credit, and then they pass the value of that on to you, the consumer, in the form of lower lease payments. So you might be seeing lots of vehicles advertised with a $7,500 lease rebate. That's likely the federal tax credit being passed on to you. So long story short here, if you have your eye on a vehicle that doesn't qualify for the clean vehicle credit, it might be worth looking at lease options if you want to capture the value of that incentive. So everything I've talked about so far has been for new cars. One thing that we're excited about with the Inflation Reduction Act is that it creates a tax credit for used electric cars for the first time. So first thing to know here is that all of those complicated battery requirements do not apply. You don't need to worry about that. The amount is $4,000 or 30% of the sales price, whichever is lower. In order to qualify, you must buy the vehicle from a dealership. You can't buy a used EV from a friend or on Craigslist or whatever. It has to be from a dealership. The vehicle must be at least 2 years old and cost less than $25,000. This only applies at the first resale. And then there is still an income threshold, but it's basically half of the cap that is set for the new vehicles. So for joint filers, income has to be less than $150,000, and for individuals, it has to be less than $75,000 to qualify for the used vehicle tax credit. One very exciting piece of news is that the Inflation Reduction Act included a provision that starting in 2024, consumers will be able to choose to transfer the tax credit to the dealership and thereby get that cost reduction right at the point of sale. The details on this are still somewhat TBD. The IRS and the Treasury did release some guidance, and there is now a sign-up form basically that dealers can use to participate in this program. But what this means is that if you are one of those people who does not have a large enough tax liability to take advantage of the full tax credit, this new provision will allow you to actually take full advantage of the federal tax credit, because by electing to transfer the tax credit to the dealership, you can basically take advantage of the dealership's very large tax liability and get the full reduction at the point of sale. So this is something we'll watch really closely. It means that EVs will be a lot more accessible to a lot more people, A, because of that tax liability issue, and B, just because a lot of people can't afford to pay $7,500 upfront and then wait up to a year to get refunded. So this is really exciting news and something to look forward to next year. This slide is mostly a reminder that there are state rebates too. We just recently had an electric vehicles incentives webinar where we went over all of this in detail, but just as a quick reminder, in Massachusetts, we've got More EV, the state rebate, that offers $3,500 for a battery electric or fuel cell vehicle if it meets certain requirements. There's also now More EV Used, which offers a rebate for used vehicles, and More EV Plus, which adds a higher rebate amount for low and moderate income drivers. And then there's More EV Truck, which offers $7,500 for some of the larger, almost commercial vehicles that you can get. And then in Rhode Island, we've got Drive, which offers rebates for both new and used electric cars, and Drive EV Plus, which offers a higher rebate for low and moderate income drivers. For time, and because we're focusing on the Inflation Reduction Act today, I'm not going to go into all the details, but you can see our incentives page on our website if you want to understand the actual eligibility requirements and how to take advantage of these state incentives. And then our Drive Green shopping tool will basically do a lot of the work for you by showing you for every vehicle what they qualify for in terms of a federal tax credit and a state rebate. So this is just a quick example of that shopping tool. If you go to greenenergyconsumers.org/drivegreen and click find a car, it'll bring you here. This is a tool that has basic information about all the electric vehicles that are on the market right now. So you can learn about the vehicle type, the range, charging capabilities, efficiency, all of that. But then on the right, you can see that we have updated the base MSRP, the federal tax credit, the state rebate, and then the cost after incentives. So you can choose what state you're in, and then you can sort and filter by different characteristics to narrow down to the type of vehicle at the price point that you're looking for. So don't worry about having to go check vehicle identification numbers or figure out exactly what the battery requirements are. We've done that work for you, and you can see that on our website. Briefly, I also want to touch on the fact that there is now a federal tax credit for installing charging infrastructure. This is both for individuals and also businesses. The amount is 30% of the cost, not to exceed $1,000 for individuals. There's a higher limit for commercial entities. This is only available if the property is in a low income or non-urban census tract. And we've put together a guide basically to figure out if the property you're considering would be eligible or not. And then there are also state programs to help bring down the costs of charging. In Massachusetts, we've got support from the utilities for wiring and infrastructure upgrades. And then there's support from state programs for installation in multi-unit dwellings and other public sites. In Rhode Island, right now, there aren't any incentives, but we are hoping/expecting that Rhode Island Energy will make a proposal to offer some program to support charging infrastructure sometime in the next couple of months. So stay tuned. Then lastly, the sort of idea that I want to end on that ties us a little bit back to how Larry started this presentation is that the Inflation Reduction Act in the transportation sector is more than just the EV tax credit. There's a ton of other stuff in there that's really shifting the market. So there's a production tax credit that has existed for a long time for various clean energy technologies that the IRA extends to battery manufacturing, which is part of the reason why we're seeing so many announcements of new battery plants across the country. The EV tax credit in the battery details that I didn't get into because they're complicated and take a lot of time, is a very clear incentive for manufacturers to use recycled materials in the manufacturing of the batteries for new EVs. And then there's just direct support. There's $20 billion in loans for new clean vehicle manufacturing plants, $2 billion for existing auto plants to revamp so that they can build EVs instead of internal combustion engine vehicles. There's billions of dollars for zero emissions equipments at ports, $1 billion for zero emission trucks and buses. There's a ton. So I'll end with a couple of images that sort of show you the scale of what the IRA is doing in this space. So this is a graphic from the Environmental Defense Fund that shows EV investment over time. It's cumulative, and you can see that first in 2021, we had the bipartisan infrastructure law that was responsible for a pretty steep rise in investments in EVs. But since the Inflation Reduction Act has passed, that steepness has just continued and resulted in nearly $100 billion worth of investment just in this first year. So that's really exciting. On the point of batteries in particular, since we know that a lot of people, including us, really care about the impacts of battery manufacturing, there are a lot of new recycling plants or production plants being announced or considered across the country, which is good news because if they're here, then we have regulations that can make sure that they're doing a good job. And just in general, we need more recycling facilities to build up in anticipation of all the EVs that are coming. So this is from the International Council on Clean Transportation. It's a cool tool that you can play around with to learn about the different maps or the different plants. And then finally, the same ICCT put out a report on the capacity to recycle EV batteries across the US. And the good news is that the capacity to recycle is actually ahead of the need right now, which is really good news. and will be ahead of the need for a while. And the reason is that most vehicle batteries are still in vehicles that are driving around. Not enough vehicles have reached their end of life yet to need to be recycled. So this is a really cool graphic of, they've looked at all of the current recycling plants and things that are have been announced as of September, and show how those points, basically the blue dot and the red dot, are far ahead of the need that we're going to have for the next couple of years, which means we've got time to get this right. And a lot of that is happening thanks to the IRA, and also things like the Advanced Clean Cars standards, which require sort of standardization and battery labeling so that all of this will get easier. So good news story in lots of ways. And with that, I will turn it back to Larry. Larry, you have to mute.
Yep. An important item to our organization, but to all tax exempt organizations. That could be a nonprofit organization, it could be a church, a synagogue, a mosque, it could be a city or town government. If you're tax exempt, you can still get the benefits of tax credits through the Inflation Reduction Act, but they're not going to use the tax system directly. They're going to the Treasury, U.S. Treasury will, if you apply for it and you qualify, you'll get a check in the mail rather than or a payment through the internet to your bank. It wouldn't be deducted from your taxes because you're tax exempt. That's a game changer. That's another one that opens up an entire market that enables more local ownership of facilities for nonprofits. It could be housing agencies, it could be city or town. Typically, the investors in clean energy over the last 20 years have been big corporations that have what's called a big tax appetite. And usually that's Wall Street money. And for clean energy, that's okay, I suppose, but it's even better if we can have more local ownership. So that's something to consider. And there's a question about that I'll get to in a second. Next slide, Anna. We're just about done with our presentation. Then we're going to open it up for questions. We are a nonprofit organization, and we can do more to speed the transition to clean energy. If you were to donate, please go to our page, greenenergyconsumers.org/donate. And what you're going to see is pretty exciting. A very generous donor has said that if you donate now in the month of November, they will match your donation up to a total of $20,000. And so we're trying to max that out. So anything you could provide would be great. If you sign up for our monthly program to give monthly, the generous donor will match that monthly contribution times 12 right now. So that will support our programs and our advocacy. And I think that's it. The next slide, maybe. And so you could put that donation slide as a reminder to people while we'll take the questions. I will read them out and assign them to people if Anna or Loie. First question: how insulated are these incentives from the IRA from congressional action to defund them? That one is, we feel pretty good. You know, we're a non-partisan nonprofit organization, but the reality is, you know, you can get this from any source. As long as Democrats control either the House or the Senate or the White House, the incentives should be available. It's kind of like, if you want to think about this, the Health Care Act, also known as the Obamacare. Once it's in, the only way to get it out is by having something that would pass the House, Senate, and White House. So we'll see in 2024 how that goes, right? Then one person says they think that the REG program in Rhode Island is not a fixed rate, and that the rate paid was great in 2016, but it's dropped precipitously. To be honest with you, you can go to their website to learn more about the REG program. Maybe it's, I thought it was fixed at each time, but it does change over time. What they do in Rhode Island is set that rate every year based upon what they think makes for an attractive enough incentive for people to install. And it's been pretty successful. A lot of people and companies are installing solar in Rhode Island again, you got to look at it in combination with the federal tax credit to see if it is worthwhile for you. Someone asked, I have a leased rooftop solar system. If I can buy out the system from the company, can I get a credit or rebate from the purchase price? I would recommend that you look at the IRS form very carefully and maybe even consult an accountant. My inclination is to say you would not, because I believe that when you lease the rooftop solar system, the company you're leasing it from is or working with, they've taken the tax credit, and so the feds would not want to allow double dipping. Question: can the older hybrid batteries be recycled? Anna, can you answer that? I think the answer is technically yes. Any more?
I think technically yes. It's difficult if you are an individual who wants to recycle a battery that's in your vehicle right now. There's not an easy way to like go find a company that will do that. There's a lot of discussion about the best ways to set up the system globally so that when a vehicle reaches the end of its useful life, do you return it to the manufacturer? Does some other company purchase your vehicle because there's still value in the battery? That's the kind of details that we're going to need to work out in the coming years. But the good news is that the capacity from a sort of technical manufacturing standpoint is there. It's the sort of flow of things that we're going to have to work out.
Thank you. Question: does any idea when the IRA rebates that I mentioned that are dependent upon somebody's a family's income, will they be available in when will they be available in Rhode Island? Honestly, in both Massachusetts and Rhode Island, the latest I have heard is that they are working things out. All 50 states are trying to work things out with the federal government, and I would bet sometime in 2024. And so I wish we could, when we know more, we will post it on our website or put it into future presentations. Sorry, we don't know more about that right now. Then here's a question. Let me see if we can try to get to this one. This person wants to replace their gas furnace at home with an air source heat pump using existing ducting. That's great. Needs to get the electrical panel upgraded. There's no rush because your gas system's 16 years old. This is a great example of where you can plan for the future. With regard to the financial incentives, you would not qualify for low income. Are there advantages for waiting for mass implementation details of the IRA or other programs? If your income is not, what you would consider to be low or moderate income, that I honestly am telling people, not everybody who's even meets the qualifications will be able to get it because the pot of money is limited. The IRA tax credits are going to be available for, as I said, 10 to 12 years. And those won't expire, the tax credits. Then on top of that, if you're a Massachusetts customer or Mass Save, our view is that Massachusetts is kind of committed to trying to make heat pump adoption grow, and that we can't promise this, but I would be surprised if Mass Save incentives for heat pumps disappeared, in the next few years. But Loie, do you want to add to that?
No, I was just typing an answer to Alan saying that we don't expect any reduction in the heat pump incentives. Massachusetts and Rhode Island have very ambitious goals for heat pump installations, and the only way they can get to those goals is by maintaining strong incentives. So don't feel like you have to do it this year or even next year. No.
Great. Thank you, Loie. Anna, there's a question there. Are there rebates for the cost of having an electrician to install the EV charging equipment at somebody's house? This person has to run new wires to the garage for the plug.
The short answer is there absolutely are, but it depends on a lot of things. So the federal tax credit is not for the electrician's costs, but it's for the hardware. The electric utilities in Massachusetts, the big investor-owned ones, National Grid and Eversource, they have programs that will help cover wiring upgrades. But exactly how much you qualify for depends on where you live and in what kind of building. So in the follow-up email, I'll include a link to our webpage where we explain how to install charging at home, and that goes over all of the incentives. So based on what kind of building you live in and where, that will let you know what you qualify for. In Rhode Island, unfortunately, right now, the only incentive is the federal tax credit. But as I mentioned, we're hoping that Rhode Island Energy will at least propose plans that are similar to those that National Grid and Eversource in Massachusetts are now implementing. And if you live in a community that's covered by a municipal light plant, definitely check in with them. There's lots of those across Massachusetts, and they each have varying approaches to EVs. So it's very possible that they might have a program that could help cover the costs of installing an EV charger.
Thank you. This question is, can you explain again what the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund is, and is it part of the IRA? Well, so the Inflation Reduction Act actually, there's some good things in there that help to actually reduce inflation, but it's really, most of the bill is about energy and climate. It's hundreds of pages. So it had a lot to do with tax credits of all kinds, for businesses, for consumers, and for different kinds of energy technologies. But it also had and there's big pots of money for all kinds of that agencies would administer. One big pot of money that's worth noticing is that Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. Was authorized, and the money's there from the Inflation Reduction Act, $27 billion. So that, so as I said, 7 billion of the 27 is going to go to a program very specifically for solar and very specifically for low income and moderate income solar. So that's that program's actually kind of up and running. All the states have applied for that money. We're waiting to see who wins. But then the other 20 billion is essentially for similar purposes. And that will be administered by the EPA, and that money is going to be coming out in various announcements over time. So that's a lot of money on top of things. And so the good news and bad news about the Inflation Reduction Act is it's wide ranging. The bad news is that there's a lot to it, and it's taking a while for federal and state governments to figure out how to get it out, and for consumers and others to learn what to do about it. The one person says, can you confirm whether or not the nonprofit direct pay, or what's also called elective credits, are they available? Honestly, we have not applied for them yet. We're looking forward to doing that with some solar projects. And so I guess I would recommend that you look for that online, and there will be a window that opens up for that. But unfortunately, it is something that you do have to register for and then apply for. So if you have any information about that, you could email me, Larry@greenenergyconsumers.org, and that'll help us all. Question, can the federal credit be applied over a few years? It depends which one it is. Generally, it's not, you can't roll them over. That's my understanding. Loie, would you agree?
Yeah, you can take a new federal credit every year, but it has to be for a new measure that you've implemented. So, for instance, if you get a heat pump, you can take that $2,000 in the first year, but you can't take an additional $2,000 each year, rolling over the total that you paid.
And if your tax liability is less than $2,000, you're limited there to whatever that is. So I think I'm an example. This year we're going to install a heat pump water heater, and we're going to get a $2,000 tax credit for that in 2023 tax credit. And we'll get a $600 tax credit because we're doing some rewiring in order to make that happen. Then in another year, someday we'll get heat pumps and that it would again be a separate tax credit of up to $2,000 at that time.
I can take that next one about baseboard hydronic heat.
Yep, go ahead.
So the question is, if we have baseboard hydronic heat system now, so they have radiators or baseboard, can a heat pump be meshed into the existing distribution system? And the answer is no, or at least not without great additional cost of installing additional heat emitters, that is more radiators, radiant flooring, radiant wall panels, that type of thing. And that's because the temperature of the water coming out of your boiler now is much greater than what can be achieved with a heat pump, with our current heat pump technology. Generally, homes with hydronic heat pumps that want to switch to heat pumps generally homes with hydronic heat systems with boilers now, that want to switch to heat pumps have to use either a ducted or ductless air source heat pump to make the conversion.
Here's a question for someone who has a commercial business and they want to install a commercial air source heat pump. What kind of incentives are there for heat pumps in that capacity? If it's a commercial taxpayer, the tax credit for heat pumps isn't there. I think the Congress made a little mistake on that one, sort of a gap that we didn't see. But what there is what's called a 179D tax deduction for something that's energy efficient. And I'm pretty sure, almost positive, we've looked into this, that the heat pump would be eligible for that. That's reducing the commercial entities' taxable income. So it's not quite as good as a tax credit, but it's something significant to pay attention to. Again, I'd recommend you talk to your accountant. Here we are neither lawyers, engineers, or accountants at Green Energy Consumers Alliance. And one person says, well, what if the project is $20,000 and 30% of that, the $6,000, but the tax credit is $2,000. Can the remaining credit be accessed in another year? I just want to be very clear. For solar energy, it's 30%, and it's uncapped at it goes well beyond $2,000. But if we're talking about heat pumps, it's limited to $2,000, and no, you can't roll it over to get it the whole thing. That would be equal to 30% in future years. So yeah, the clarification was for solar PV. You would get that. I don't think you can roll that over in order to if your taxable income is lower than what it would cost. Can a builder get tax credits for installing heat pumps in a major renovation? Pretty certain the answer is yes, right, Lois?
Well, again, is the builder...
It's ultimately the ultimate taxpayer who's
Right.
owning the system would get the tax credit, but builders ought to be paying attention so that they can use that as a selling point, right?
Yep. Whoever's filing the taxes on the property would be able to claim the tax credit, yes.
Here's one, I think, for Anna, a two-family currently renovating. Sorry about the house fire. Wanted a wire for an EV for tenants. God bless you for doing that. But I know every car has differences. What might be some options for me? What do I need to consider?
So the good news is that I'm making the assumption that you live in Massachusetts and National Grid and Eversource territory. If that is true, then the utility has a program specifically for buildings with 2 to 4 units, if that is you, or buildings with 5+ units, where they will cover the costs of wiring upgrades and they can help walk you through it. Basically, generally, a level 2 charging station, which is the kind of home charging station an electric vehicle would use, is about 240 volts. We have a guide on our website about installing charging at home that gets into more detail about amps and circuits and all that. And I would recommend you take a look at that. But either by looking at that guide or reaching out to the utility, you should be able to figure out an easy way to do that. And sorry about the fire, but this is a great time to install the charging capacity. So I'm making a list of all the resources to share in the follow-up email, and I'll include those for the EVs.
Thank you. Question, is it possible to install a wind turbine at a residential home? This person gets a lot of wind? Are there rebates? The tax credits that I mentioned, the energy tax credits, it's not limited to solar. So that would be, the tax credit would apply to a wind project. So you should look that up. It's more about, can you get it permitted at the local level? I caution you, our knowledge is that, we recommend, we think offshore wind and large wind turbines onshore produce electricity at a very good cost per kilowatt hour. A smaller wind turbine, not so much. There's a matter of physics. The higher you are up into the air, the higher the wind speed. The production of a wind turbine is related to the cube of the wind speed, and it's also related to the length of the wind turbine of the blades, so it's related to the area of the swept surface. So it's it's pi r squared. So it's about all I know about engineering of wind turbines. So I just would ask you to be cautious of that. But yes, you could get the tax credit. I don't believe that in Massachusetts there's a state program for that. There might be at Commerce RI in Rhode Island, but I don't think so. There are incentives based upon level of income, percent of area median income, what year's income is used. I think we're going to wait for the states to tell us how that's going to be administered. I think that when they run the program, we'll see if they use 2023 or 2024. Then here's one. Has there been any discussion around cultivating a referral network of endorsed tax professional consultants? Much like what we have. We've got Energy Sage and we've got Abode who help us with, who our organization looks on for PV and for heat pumps. Tax professional consultants, not a bad idea. Anna and Loie will think about it and tell me what they think. And then maybe we'll be able to say that, because that is sort of it's an important thing. Loie, here's a question for you. Would you be willing to would our organization hire a contractor to aggregate information on qualified electricians who can upgrade electrical service, say from 100 amps to 200 amps, as a precursor to installation of a heat pump, hot water heater, solar, or Anna, how about electric vehicle charging stations? Loie and Anna, what do you think about that one?
Yeah, if we had a source of funding to hire that contractor, it would be fabulous to task someone with the job of calling contractors, calling electrical contractors, and finding out what their experience is and what they charge, et cetera, what their physical territories are that they install. Anna has a little bit of experience with this through the EV program. Perhaps she could speak to the difficulty of doing this.
I will say that this is something we had for a while, maybe not quite the way that you're describing it, but we did for a while maintain a list of licensed and insured electricians who were able to do an EV charging installation. We're at a point where that is not a hard thing for most electricians to do, at least if we're talking about a single family home or like a 2 to 4 family home, not a big multiplex with 250 apartments or something like that. And what we found when we surveyed folks who had gone through Drive Green, most just went with the electrician they would hire for anything, or any electrician they already had a relationship with. I think for heat pumps, hot water heaters, and solar, that's a little bit different. But there are increasingly companies that specialize in this kind of stuff, either EV installations or solar and battery storage. So I understand that from a consumer perspective, it would be nice to be told, go with these guys. But at least for EVs in particular, we found that really your local electrician can do the job.
Yes, we love to be able to help people save a little bit of money on that electrician's point of view, but it's not an easy thing for us to administer and promise to people and to maintain it. What we're really trying to do is help maybe save you all bigger money on thinking through your options for the EV itself and the charging station, the purchase of the equipment, and how to access heat pump and solar companies that you can trust. That's what we think we can do. I think that's it for all the questions. And one more. Is a heat pump water heater better than a tankless water heater? Loie, would you want to take that one? That's our last question, and I think we're done.
If a heat pump water heater is, I believe, well, no, I'm sorry, I can't really answer the question. I haven't done adequate research on it.
I think better is a term that could be construed in different ways. It's more efficient per unit of energy, and it doesn't require combustion. And that's one reason why my family's going to get a heat pump water heater. We have very high efficiency gas in our house, gas, heat and gas hot water. But we're going to go to the heat pump water heater mainly because it's going to be more efficient and it's will reduce the greenhouse gases. But if you on it, we didn't do the numbers to be able to say to ourselves that it's going to save us money over the long run. To be honest with you, so that is a judgment call. I think the heat pump water heaters are getting better all the time, and they are highly efficient. Okay. The final comment somebody said was a major speed bump to installations is not having residential service and panels to handle those additions and upgrades. We know that. We know also from talking to state agencies that are working in this area, they know that. And they're trying to build that into programs over time. And actually, like I said, we just paid to upgrade our service from 100 amp to 200 amp. So we get that. Now it's not a huge pot of money, but if you coming back to the original point about how the tax credits work, if you upgrade your electrical panel in the same year that you install a heat pump or a heat pump water heater, you can get a $600 tax credit on the panel upgrade. That's not everything. We get it. We know the panel upgrade costs more than that, but it's something. So in my case, for example, we're going to couple that. We're going to install the heat pump water heater this year. We're going to get we've done the wiring. We'll be able to get a combination of $2,000 plus $600, $2,600 in tax credits. So and there might be more if you're income eligible. We keep saying that in a few months we'll know more details. You might be able to get a rebate that could help even pay for more of that wiring, but those details just aren't out yet.
Yeah, I would just put in one more plug for the Rewiring America calculator, because that will allow you to get a rough ballpark of whether or not your household is going to be income qualified for the larger rebates. And for electrical wiring, it's significantly larger. So do that Rewiring America calculator, find out if you're in the moderate or low income category that will allow you to access even larger rebates for the wiring upgrades, and even for market rate rebates. There will be additional money potentially for rewiring, but that's going to be a different process, perhaps a more complicated process. But do that Rewiring America to get a sense of, should I wait or not? How big is the incentive going to be if I do wait?
But I do want to be clear, the pot of money for those rebates is limited, and it is not going to be for all comers. That's the caution I would have, is that you may be income eligible, but the state might have to put some parameters on it because they just can't serve everybody. We're past time. I guess I want to close it out, I want to say thank you to everybody who participated, and to Anna and Loie for providing their information. They're experts in their fields. We will send out slides and the recording to people, and even for those who registered but did not participate today. So with that, I hope you'll probably get that within 2 days, I would say. And we hope this was helpful to you. And have a good day.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.